Misfits, people ask me all the time about tools that I use in my life and business to maximize my success. I usually start by telling them one of my most powerful tools is my morning habits. And of course, they look at me somewhat confused. I then explain how important it is for me to center myself and how I begin my day and plan for my success. It's critical to consistent high performance. And it doesn't take me long, about 5 or 10 minutes, because I use a great resource called the 5-Minute Journal. The 5-Minute Journal is the simplest, most effective way I've ever found to start your day in the right mindset, doing the right things, and set yourself up for success. And it is exactly what it says, a 5-minute exercise you can do each day. Let me ask you, if you could reach your next level in your life and business by spending just 5 minutes of focused time a day, would you do it? I bet you would. And I know it works because I've experienced the power of it. And you can get your 5-minute journal simply by going to www.misfitentrepreneur.com/journal. That's misfitentrepreneur.com/journal. Do what I do. Use this amazing resource to give yourself an edge in your performance and your success. Get your 5-minute journal today.
Hello, Misfit Entrepreneurs. This is Dave Lukas, and welcome to another episode of the Misfit Entrepreneur, where it's our job to help you unleash your inner misfit and break through to higher levels of success, wealth, and fulfillment by bringing you the best insight and information from the world's top entrepreneurs, with a specific focus on their misfit side, the specific traits, habits, and secrets that have allowed them to thrive and succeed. As a reminder, if you're new to watching us on our YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button below. Give this video a like and comment as well. We do our best to respond to all comments as timely as possible. This week's Misfit Entrepreneur is Josiah JJ Harling. If you've ever wanted to understand the mindset and strategy behind sustained high performance, JJ is the guy to learn from. He is the author of Stride and the founder of Compel Global, where he helps leaders and organizations harness their full potential through intentional action and discipline. But what really caught my attention is JJ's philosophy on the power of relentless momentum. In Stride, he talks about how small, consistent actions taken daily are what separates the extraordinary from the average. And he shares how elite performers don't just wait for inspiration. They really create it through habits and systems that keep them moving forward, no matter what the obstacles. As he puts it, success isn't about speed. It's about stride, the right rhythm maintained over time. It beats raw talent every time. That quote really got me fired up to have him on the show. So let's jump in. JJ, are you ready to unleash your inner misfit?
Absolutely, man. Let's do it. It's awesome to be here with you, Dave.
Well, it's great to have you on. And as we do with every guest, you've got kind of an interesting journey of how you've gotten to this point. So why don't you take 5 minutes or so and just tell us, how'd you get to where you're at?
Yeah, man. Well, as I said, it's awesome being with you guys today. I live here in Colorado Springs with my bride and our 2 boys. And I've spent really the last 20 years working in the nonprofit space. Helping organizations grow and at the same time, kind of 2 sides of that coin, helping individuals find and embrace a deep sense of purpose, or some might even say calling or vocation on their lives, and really coaching them into the right opportunities for impact globally. Now, my master's is in organizational leadership, and so I have done a fair amount of executive coaching, leadership coaching as well. Some consulting for organizations to really be able to break through and unleash greater impact. I mean, this is all about impact, which is different, substantially different than the traditional mile markers of success, right? So maybe a bigger business or more profit. Those are really important things, but a true sense of internal satisfaction and meaning, right? That's what we're all designed for, is to walk with that deep sense of why.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I want to dig into is really how somebody really can find their meaning and what their why is. We talk a lot about, having that, having that why to drive you, right? But before we get into that, talk to us a little bit about, and maybe it's part of it, the kind of the Stride philosophy, like break it down for us.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Stride is, it's a book that I released last fall, but it's actually built on a coaching framework that I use when I'm coaching individuals through this journey of identifying their next steps. And the idea is that it actually comes out of me taking a jog with a friend of mine a number of years ago, and I am not a jogger. but he was, and he said, JJ, I'm going to run behind you, and you're going to go fast, and then you're going to go slow, and then you're going to go faster, and you're going to go slower, and we're going to find eventually the rhythm and the right stride, the right pace that works for you. And running is notoriously painful for me. My knees hurt, my everything hurts. And then when we finally hit that right stride, it was like the pain was gone. The friction was gone. I was moving effortlessly, to put it that way. And the idea is the same really when it comes to your vocation, to your relationships. We want to help you really find your stride where you feel that sense of I'm made for this. So the stride framework, it breaks down into 6 core parts. And I think your truest sense of calling or vocation is at the intersection of 6 things: your story, your triggers, we'll unpack that in a moment, the things you need to release that you've been carrying that really are holding you back, sense of identity, sense of direction, and a sense of endurance. That's the framework.
So let's break those down each one by one, right? And how they all fit together. I think that's the best way to go about this. So
Yeah,
take us through them.
Sure. For sure. Well, let's start with this idea of story, because if I've coached hundreds of people over the years, and when I start asking them, what do they feel called to for the future? They'll always bring me their resume, and the resume is very different from a story, because a resume really is about your list of accomplishments. What are the accomplishments you think speak to your credibility? But your story is about the things that you've endured. And that's a really different thing, right? So when you're looking at your past, what are some of the things you've endured? Because that's what shapes your values. It shapes your worldview. It shapes your perspectives. It shapes resilience. We want all of that good stuff that oftentimes, includes some painful points in our journey. When we think about the future, rarely do we think our greatest, failures could speak into that, but they do. If you look at any leader that has achieved remarkable success, oftentimes it actually comes from some of their darkest places in their past, right? Some of the pains that they've endured, there's immense value in that. We want to distill that value. So I lead through a coaching process to begin distilling some of the value from those painful experiences.
Well,
so that's the story piece.
Yeah. So, and that makes sense. I mean, and the story that we tell ourselves becomes our reality a lot too, right?
Absolutely.
So if we don't have that right, or we have the wrong story about ourselves, it can impact us greatly. While we're on this, because we're starting the kind of foundational with the story, talk to us a little bit about how somebody can find their meaning and their why. Maybe you've got somebody listening that they're like, I just don't know. Right. And I'm trying to find my way, and it's hard, right, for some people. So like, what is it that, and entrepreneurs go through this a lot. Entrepreneurs question their, who they are, what they are, and, a lot of, do I have imposter syndrome? All that stuff, comes up. So how does somebody really get to their true meaning, their true why of what they're doing, and then use that as a base to jump off from? We'll go through the other 5.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think it's a really good question, and it has to start internal, right? There's a reason we want to start with this idea of story, because your story is deeply personal, right? That is something unique that only you have walked through. Dave, I think I've told you I'm a person of faith. I know not everybody is, but I take great inspiration from the Bible. One of my favorite verses is actually in the book of Ephesians, and it talks about how we are uniquely created for good works prepared in advance for us to do. If we're uniquely created, that means that the perspectives and the experiences that have shaped my worldview are profoundly different than yours. So we've got to start with our story. That is the way to really start this deeper sense of why. So we're gonna take an inventory. When I'm coaching people, I'm actually gonna have them write out their story. How did they get to this point? What have been some of those key milestones, key pain points that they have walked through that have shaped a different worldview and perspective for them? And, in there is beginning to see the value of challenge. And there's a lot of ways that challenge and pain can actually be a tremendous blessing in our lives. It's going to help you innovate, right? It's going to help build resilience and hardiness. I've talked to employers who say the number one thing we're looking for is hardiness. Have you been through some stuff? That's a really interesting top criteria for employers, but it's so valuable, right? Resilience. Have you learned through pain, through the pain of your story, have you learned how to carry on and move forward? That's a qualification for your future, even more so than the certification you have in Salesforce or whatever else, right? That's sitting on your resume. So we're gonna look at all of that, but I think that idea of story is really the place to start in figuring out your why for the future.
No, I think it's. I think people make it more complicated than it has to be.
Yeah,
I think that's part of the issue. Like they think there's like this big secret they got to figure out what it is. That's their why. But I mean, honestly, just asking yourself what you truly want and then questioning whether that's true and digging deeper on that is going to get you there. And then it'll give you a good base to go from. So once
I think in articulating that the story piece and the challenges that you've walked and actually putting that in writing, now you're dealing with facts. You're not dealing with mind games or opinions. And that's really important, right? What tangible moments in your past have shaped who you are?
Well, there's another side to that too, because we talk about that a lot. Is that's part of your conditioning, right? Because everybody comes out of the womb with a clean slate. They're born with a clean slate. Your mind is shaped by all the different things that impact your life from the time you're born. So, parents, friends, media, culture, religion, school, all these things, family, all that shapes how you approach life in a lot of ways and how you react to things and your responses to things. And so do like specific incidences, things that have happened to you and that sort of thing. And you mentioned like, the ultimate in personal power is when somebody really learns to live from true choice and look at those things and how they're reacting to things or how they're responding and asking themselves, is this something that I truly would choose for myself the way I'm responding here or the reaction that I'm having? Or do I want it to be something different? And once somebody really understands how to do that, they can change their whole world, right? And don't get me wrong, a lot of stuff we pick up through our conditioning is great. There's some things that can be debilitating to our potential. Yeah. And you mentioned this, and it's one of the steps you're talking about, but I think it's really important for people to understand that through that process and through life and through the specific instances that we have and these things and this conditioning, the things happen, and that becomes like, it can become like albatrosses around people's neck holding them back that, are very specific to them. Right. And we talk about, and a good friend of mine, I know is a good friend of yours, Evan Money's coined the term return on forgiveness. Yeah. And, so there's ROI, there's ROF, return on forgiveness. But when you talk about forgiveness, yes, there are probably things that you're carrying with you that are that anger, that whatever that is that somebody has that ultimately can, hold them back. Right. And if they forgive that person or forgive that situation or whatever, right, that can release them from that. Right. And take, get clarity and not have, things that are holding them back. But a lot of times the thing that they need, or the person they need to forgive the most, is themselves for something. Totally. And once they do that, it's like, whoosh, you just a whole new world opens up because you're not carrying around the albatross. So I'd love to hear you kind of talk about the next steps and how that fits in, because I imagine that's part of it.
Absolutely, yeah. So let me walk through the next two sections of this framework, because I think they're pretty important and they touch on what you were just talking about. So after story would be this idea of your triggers, and I want to speak to that briefly. Because what I'm capturing here is actually a something that's valuable, which would be an emotional response, right? So your journey as an entrepreneur, if you're starting a business, whatever your next chapter looks like, there has to be emotional engagement that's tied in. It can't just be a dollars and cents, logic-based decision. Hey, this door, this opportunity opened, I'm going to walk through it. Instead, I really want people to latch on to this idea of what is an emotional trigger for me? What what keeps me up at night or wakes me up in the morning, right? Because otherwise you're going to run dry really, really, really quick. And this could be, even a pain point in the world that you say, man, this is not right. I need to do something. I work a lot in the international humanitarian space, right? Something like anti-trafficking work. This is not right. I need to do something about the fact that there are more slaves on the planet today than any other time in history, right? There has to be some sort of an emotional trigger, emotional catalyst that launches you forward into your future. So we're going to do a little bit of work on that. But then the next segment after that is this idea of release. And that's what you were talking about, Dave. What are the things that I'm carrying with me that ultimately I have to release in order to embrace a meaningful future? And I certainly agree with you. Anger is one, right? Whether that's anger with others, and I need to walk a journey of forgiveness, whether that's anger with myself and my own shortcomings, right? We commonly would refer to that as shame, right? What are the things I feel shame about that I want to sweep under the rug that really I need to cut ties with and be able to move forward? There's a huge one in here, which is fear, right? Fear is something that we cling on to. It's like carry-on baggage, right? That just, we're just lugging around with us everywhere that we go. And really the cure for fear is to embrace vulnerability. Allow yourself the freedom to fail is really important, right? Have the vulnerability and the courage to allow yourself to fail. And then coupled with that, establish small bite-sized steps with accountability for forward progress, right? That's how you overcome that idea of fear of failure. We're gonna lean into that quite a bit, and the idea is we just want to cut some of those things that are holding us back in some of these key areas. I've seen a lot of leaders really trap themselves where they are because of like you said, the messages they're playing in the back of their mind about their own failures of the past, their own shortcomings of the past, those things that are creating shame in mind, and they can't embrace a future. So we need to do some work on that.
Yeah. And keep going. Go ahead.
Well, and I can walk through the next several, unless you want to hang out on that idea.
No. I think that I was going to say that encompasses it pretty good, because that gets you to, like, once you've done that, now you're really ready to grow, right? So I imagine the next couple, that's what it's about. So go ahead.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So the next one would be identity. And here's where you get into those things like your strengths, your gifts, your unique personality and makeup, right? All of that has value. It's just not the whole picture, right? That's not relevant until you've done the first 3 categories of coaching. And then your strengths and your unique abilities begin to speak in to your future after that. All right. So identity, we're going to look at really taking an inventory of what are the unique skills, abilities, passions, gifts, talents, personalities that I have, personality traits that I have that actually bring value into a corporate culture or into an entrepreneurial journey. After identity, you're going to look at direction. And here, this one's really interesting, because when I have friends that I've been in the process of coaching who are looking at the future, and they say, man, if I just had clarity, I'd be able to move forward. The problem is we're setting clarity with the expectation of a floodlight, like the whole path will be illuminated for us ahead of us. And I think sometimes a better approach is a flashlight. I have just enough clarity for the next couple of steps, but I'm going to take courage to move forward in that. And it really becomes an art of mastering forward progress with a limited perspective of clarity. This is really hard for entrepreneurs because we want the certainty. We want the certainty of knowing that the whole thing is going to work. We want the certainty of the 10-year plan. And sometimes I think what we're really called to is the 1-year plan, right? The 1-month plan. What are the steps I can take today with the information that I have today? And then it takes a lot of trust and courage to just hang on with everything that happens after that. And so that idea of direction is one we need to spend a little bit of time on. And then finally, this idea of endurance. I don't know about you, but in the entrepreneurial journey, I realized I had a bit of an idol that if it was going to work, it was going to work quick. Right. I've got this idea that, the overnight success stories, that's my benchmark of what success needs to look like. And I've really had to refine in my mind that success is a long obedience in the same direction, right? This is something that is going to look a lot more like a marathon than it is a sprint. And there are some keys that you can bring in to sustain you in that journey of endurance. But we need to really refresh our minds on this idea that this is a long haul.
Long game.
A sprint. Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, great points in the end on all that stuff, because it's true. This show, I think if people go back and they watch episode after episode or listen to episode after episode, they're going to see some key themes that run consistently. One of them is playing the long game, because that is absolutely true for entrepreneurship. And it's interesting. You were talking about like the 10-year plan and that stuff. It's funny, most plans are out the window in the first week. Right. But it's the ability to adapt and just, keep on going. Right. Which is, I think the element of stride is, what's the next step forward? Let's take it. Right. And then we'll worry about the next step after that and so on. Right. And like, that's kind of the point of it. And that's entrepreneurship to the core, and it's doing it for many years, right? In most cases, right? So it took me, over a decade.
It requires you to really be nimble and flexible, and to hold things with a loose hand and say, man, I'm committed to this today, but I recognize that there might be a turn in the path, and that's okay. And to give yourself the freedom and the flexibility for that is really important.
Well, it took me well over a decade before I sold my first company. After that, it got easier because I'd been through it and understood it and knew exactly what to do and how to prepare a company and do that stuff. But I had to go through the rite of passage, that long game, to learn how to do those things, right? And so I just think, everybody needs to take that view. And it's hard I often joke, we live in this instant society. We can't even wait for the microwave. We stop the microwave with 3 seconds left. Can't wait for that anymore, Right. And that's the world we live in. Everything's instant, right? And so it's your ability to, delay the gratification, but also keep those impulses like that at bay and just keep going. And that's what separates a lot of entrepreneurs. It's not a lot of times it's not talent. It's not even that they're smart or anything. It's just they kept going where others didn't. And I think that's important. In fact, that's a good. I want to take a quick break there because I want to come back. I want to talk about your entrepreneur journey some as well. So we're going to do that. We're going to take a quick 1-minute break. We'll be right back.
Misfit Entrepreneurs, I want to tell you about an amazing resource that will have tremendous impact on your business and your revenue. I have used this solution in multiple businesses and it has made an incredible difference. Let me start by asking you something. Do you know how much it costs your business when just one salesperson doesn't step up to deliver? Do you really know? The cost can easily exceed 6 figures for just one bad hire, not just from the time, effort, and resources in hiring them, but from the lost business and downtime as well, as you have to go find a new salesperson and everything surrounding that. And the last thing any growing business can afford is to have a failed hire, especially in sales, the revenue driver for the company. But what if there was a way to know someone checked all the boxes of a great sales hunter and closer before you ever hired them? That's the solution that I found from a company called Sales Drive. They have created a solution called Drive Test. It's a powerful hiring tool that separates high-performance salespeople from pretenders by measuring the most critical personality trait needed for success in sales: drive. Drive is composed of 3 non-teachable traits shared by all top producers: the need for achievement, competitiveness, and optimism. And knowing who has drive before the interview dramatically increases your chances of selecting salespeople who will produce for you while avoiding those costly bad hires. I've used the solution and it works. In fact, it works so well, I've referred them to every company that I work with. And they've created a very special offer so that you can try them for free as well. You can get a free drive test assessment today at www.misfitentrepreneur.com/sales drive. That's misfitentrepreneur.com/sales drive, all one word. Start using the drive test in your hiring and never hire a bad salesperson again.
right. So JJ, with Compel Global, you've worked all over the world internationally. You've worked with top performers, you've worked with organizations. What are some of the patterns that you do see among? I mean, we are just talking about long game, but what are some patterns you see among those who truly excel and stay at those high levels?
That's a great question. I think we touched on it earlier, but that idea of resilience and hardiness is one thing that is a high predictor of success. So what I do is I send people all over the world to serve in various long-term humanitarian roles. So whether that's serving among, refugee populations or in remote villages in third world countries, whether they're digging wells or planting churches or whatever else, there's a high degree of really suffering and a lack of comfort in most of the places that I'm sending people into the next 10, 20 years of their lives. So I'm a placement organization for nonprofit organizations all over the world. I'm a matchmaker, recruiter at large for them. And so as I'm coaching people to really find their right fit, I definitely notice that resiliency piece is huge. If somebody in an initial interview tells me, JJ, I've been through some stuff, that's actually a pretty significantly exciting phrase that I'll hear, because it means that they're going to have the tools internally, the coping mechanisms to be able to navigate through challenge as it arises over the next 20 years. Another thing that comes up all the time, and we were just talking about it a second ago with that idea of direction and being willing to pivot, is when people have the courage to take steps forward, understanding that their path may take a left or a right-hand turn, and that's okay. That happens a lot. So case in point, let's say I send somebody over to, Greece to work among refugee populations for the next 10 years of their lives. And they learn Greek, they learn Arabic, they're doing all of that. And then after 3 years, the refugee pipeline changes because of a governmental policy. And now they're at kind of start over phase, right? Have they learned the importance of adjustments and tweaks, or does that completely derail their entire career? And now they come back to the US wondering what happened. If we teach people to take steps forward while at the same time holding plans loosely, that's a really good posture to have and a high predictor of success that I've seen. So those are a couple of the things that I've seen when it comes to organizations. Some of the organizational growth coaching that I've done, I would actually say that same thing: the willingness to be flexible and to put people and situations ahead of policies, procedures, and all of the
bureaucracy.
Eyes crossed. Yeah, I mean it's crazy, but if you're an organization that wants to grow, what does it look like to really prioritize people and what they actually need, rather than just what your organization needs and the systems that you've created? And so I do a lot of coaching with organizations to kind of shepherd through some of that stuff.
No, it's those are great points and good things that I think anybody should take and learn from. Especially that last point too. I've seen it too. Like, I've seen companies that as they grow, they feel the need to add in more layers and more layers and more layers. And it ends up, you get in that where you're having meetings for the sake of having meetings, and then you have a meeting to talk about it and all that stuff. I think, and it's tough, admittedly, but there is a fine balance that you strike between growing and putting in the right levels of how you do your leadership and everything, with balancing, how you are effective with each of those areas too, right? And that's something that I think experience is about one of the only ways to really learn it well. You have to go through it in a lot of ways. But if you can see other organizations and how they've done things to stay lean, but at the same time be able to grow, I think that's a great lesson, great things to look for, examples to look for, in anybody as they do their business. Your own entrepreneur. Yeah, go ahead.
You want to keep your Your culture, you want to guard that at all costs, right?
Yeah.
Organizationally. Uh, but a number of years ago, I had a mentor who talked to me, and at this point, is a super common story. But Michael Jordan was not a number one draft pick, right?
Right.
And it's because the team that had the number one draft pick that year had a specific position they had to fill, so they chose somebody else, right? What does it look like for us to have a corporate culture that's flexible enough to recognize when something really unique comes to the table and build strategy around that, rather than, well, here's our structure and this is the role we have, and so,
Right.
this guy's not the right fit. That's a wildly different posture, but a really important one for organizations.
I think that's a wonderful example of it. Your own entrepreneur journey. And you mentioned it earlier, and I'm curious because every entrepreneur, high performer faces setbacks. Heck, I'm going through one right now. A lot of people know I just did an episode on it. I'm, wearing the shirt, but I'm a highly competitive, Ironman athlete. I'm ranked top 100 in the U.S. In my age group from last year, and coming in this year, qualified for the championships and all that type of stuff. And about a little over 3 weeks ago, I got hit with a massive nerve issue in my back, and I can hardly walk straight without, a limp right now. And so, like, I'm working through how I overcome that and how I can hopefully September get to race in Nice, France this year, right? If not, hopefully next year. But but I'm running business. I'm doing and so you figured out, you find a way and do it. And so you overcome the setback, whatever it is, right? And it's a choice. And so I'm curious, is there a moment where like you felt like you lost your stride and had to fight to get it back? And like, what'd you do? What'd you learn from that?
Yeah, I mean, we're navigating one right now. So we, as a nonprofit, we are a nonprofit that generates revenue, and so there's a business side to what we do, and we attempted a model for the first, really 3 years that has had some mixed results in terms of the business side of what we do, and we realized, it's not hitting it out of the park like it needs to be. And so we've dramatically shifted and actually completely reorganized, re-envisioned our pricing model entirely, rolling out this year. And that means we're going to lose some clients on that, and we're picking up a whole bunch of new ones. And it feels a little bit like we are rebuilding from scratch. And, I had this habit of referring to our organization as a bit of an experiment for the first couple of years, until my board cautioned me I can't do that anymore. But I do love that posture of saying, everything here is about experimentation, right? And we are going to try things, they're not going to work, and then we're going to try something else. And having that resiliency to just say, well, okay, let's re-envision. Let's go again. Over and over and over again, I think, is really how you work through some of those challenges and some of those things that you get blindsided by. I remember
what was the reason that you had to make the change, or that you made the change?
Yeah. There were several. I think one of them, well, actually, probably the main piece is we realized that we had pioneered a model that eliminated risk on behalf of our client organizations that we serve 100%. Only paid for results. And the problem with that is you're never establishing the buy-in early enough with those client organizations to be able to really steward a potential candidate early on. And so we've had to front a lot of that payment model really to build the buy-in so that it actually costs our clients something right out of the gate. Because our clients are actually the organizations we serve, not the individuals that we place.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So interesting pivot, but it sounds like it's working out and it's opening up the market for you too.
Yes,
which
absolutely.
is, yeah, awesome. That's a great example. Talk a lot about leadership, right?
Yeah.
And obviously you're placing leaders. So talk to us about your leadership approach and maybe how you feel maybe it differs from traditional thinking, philosophy, and anything that you think is important for entrepreneurs to understand about how they can be better leaders.
Yeah, man. I just want to tell you, I feel like I'm at the front end of my my leadership journey. My master's is in organizational leadership. I've been in the leadership space for the last 20 years, but every time that I'm in a leadership situation, I walk away saying, "Man, I could have done that differently," almost without fail. And I think that's a good thing, right? Because we want to constantly be learning and growing and adjusting. I recognize, a trend in myself as an entrepreneur, that there is a high tendency for control, right? I have a very hard time with delegating, delegating even the creative, dream building stuff, right? Because it's easy for me to give a task list to somebody. It's a lot harder for me to give a problem to someone and say, "Hey, dream with me, dream on your own. How would you solve this?" And to trust them enough to be able to do that. But I recognize that that's what's needed. So in order for us to scale and grow, there has to be that dream envisioning piece that doesn't solely rest with me; it rests with others on the team. I don't know if that makes sense, but what I'm trying to capture there is some of that creative energy from team members and employees. We want to be able to harness that. I think that's one of the key learnings that I've been having as a leader, particularly entrepreneurial of a really small organization.
Well, it does make sense. Good leadership has a multiplier effect. And like what I mean by that is like the hardest thing to do, and I'm from the Midwest. We've got the Midwest mentality. Everybody's taught you want something done right, you do it yourself. It was one of the hardest things for me to break
Totally.
as an entrepreneur, right? And so, but like most of the time, they're not going to do it how you would do it. Right. And you have to be okay with that. Sometimes they'll do it better. Right. And that's something where it's really important. If you know your true strengths and your zone of genius, and you can really spend time there and focus there and then find others to complement, it's a great thing. But if you develop people and you give them the empowerment, and you let them go out, you let them fail on their own, you let them figure it out, you let them, become, the best version of themselves and their potential. Again, they may not do it exactly as you do it, but they'll do it, they'll get it done, they'll get the result. But that creates a multiplier effect, because then they do the same with somebody else and somebody else and somebody else. And very soon, if you've done it right, in an organization, you find that you can let go of a lot, right? It doesn't mean you don't trust but verify, as as the phrase goes, but you can really let go a lot and let people, take that ownership, right? People support what they help to create. People want to be part of something bigger than themselves, right? Absolutely. And so allowing them that ability to step into that, it creates amazing things. And sometimes the entrepreneur that's holding their own organization back, not allowing that, right? And I think it's kind of where I hear you're stepping back, you're allowing that to happen. And so it's starting to make a difference, and it probably will work exponentially for you as this new model goes on and stuff. So,
that's what I'm hoping for, Dave. I mean, I think that is the hardest thing in the entrepreneurial journey, right? This is our baby, right? This is something that we had the dream for, we created, but we're going to be the biggest hurdle for it growing to what it could be unless we get out of the way. And that's
you gotta release yourself from those things.
You got to, man. There we go. Chapter 5.
Last question for you before we get to your Misfit 3. And it kind of circles back around to where we started in the beginning, but I think it's critical for anyone listening. If somebody really truly feels stuck, right? They hear all this, and they're like, I get it, but I'm stuck. I don't know where to start. Like, what's the first action that they should take to get momentum and then stride?
Honestly, man, I am a firm believer in the value of a coach, whether that's a paid coach, whether that is just an outside voice, but just by articulating, I'm stuck, I need help, and I want to be committed to progress. By articulating that to someone, that's step one. That's absolutely huge. And I believe me, I do a lot of executive coaching. I believe in hiring a paid coach, but if that's not a reality for where you're at now, find someone that you can trust and say those three things. I think they really matter, because that starts that journey of accountability right there. Otherwise, you're just going to kind of stay stuck. Certainly pick up the book as well. I think that would be really helpful next step for you.
No, that's a great point and a great way to end it. You got to have skin in the game. If you really, if you truly believe in yourself and your why, and you're going to get over that hump and go, yeah, having some skin in the game and having that outside perspective is a great way. I've had, coaches in a number of areas throughout my life, and still do today. I have multiple. And am I smarter than them in some ways? Absolutely. Do I understand some things better than they do? But man, their perspective on things I don't, gosh, what a difference it makes, right? So it's important to have that. So thanks for sharing that.
If it's a good coach, the coach is going to draw out the answer that's inside of you, right? And that exactly is the key of effective coaching. A coach is going to ask a lot of questions because you have to believe that answer is already inside of you. It's just getting it.
Absolutely. It's a great point. Actually, it's a great way to end it before we get to your Misfit 3. We're going to do that. We're going to take one more 1-minute break, and we'll be right back with JJ's Misfit 3.
Before we get into today's Misfit 3, I want to take a minute to talk to you about a free resource available to you from the Misfit Entrepreneur, the Misfit Minute. The Misfit Minute is the free weekly resource packed with useful tips, tricks, and information from the world of Misfit entrepreneurs. It not only includes further resources on the week's Misfit Entrepreneur guest, but additional links, articles, and resources to help you be more successful. It's delivered every Friday to your inbox. To sign up, all you have to do is go to the homepage at www.misfitentrepreneur.com, and you will see the Misfit Minute sign-up page. Don't miss out on this great resource and all it has to help you. Sign up today and look for it this Friday.
Okay, it's time for JJ's Misfit 3. These are the 3 things that he wants you to take that you can put in your life, your business, make a difference for yourself starting today. And the way that I always frame this to every guest that comes on the show is I say, hey, look, if you were going to leave this earth tomorrow and you could only leave behind your 3 best pieces of wisdom to the generations that come after you to help them live their best life, what would those 3 things be? So, JJ, what are your Misfit 3?
Man, I love that question so much. And it was really, really hard to boil down to 3, Dave. But man, I loved it. I think where I landed is number 1, be curious. Okay. And what I mean by that is oftentimes we can approach life like a merchant, right? I have a solution I want to give out, right? But it's a far more exciting and fulfilling life to approach life like an explorer, right? What is happening in the world and how can I jump in? What is, again, as a person of faith, what is God doing in the world and how can I join it? I think curiosity is so important. And that's one of the things that I hope marks my son's journeys, that they carry on for the generation long after I'm gone. Right. Number 2 is a commitment to be purposeful. Right. So you are on this planet for a reason. And the number of leaders or people I meet who seem to be questioning that is really disheartening to me. I want you to recognize and be committed, even if you haven't unpacked it yet. Be committed that you are here on purpose. That's a huge deal, because you are. And then number 3 is be hopeful, right? Our world is filled with people that have really dissolved down into cynicism or anger or fighting or whatever else. Just what does it look like, or what sort of an impact? How would the world be different if we walked around just eternally hopeful, right? My hat here actually says "passing through." And I bought it at a rafting store, but I love the message because it just kind of gives this little hopeful message of, hey, we're here temporarily, right? It's a great way to take some of those setbacks and kind of release them. Hey, we're just here temporarily. Let's make the best of it while we're here. I want you to be hopeful, right? I want you to live with a posture of hope. That's going to change the world. So those are my 3. Be curious, be purposeful, be hopeful.
JJ is an excellent Misfit 3. And that last one, I think, is very important. It's a great message for people to hear. If people do want to learn more about you, where should they go?
Yeah, absolutely. So they could go to josiahharling.com, JOSIAHHARLING. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook. And then the organization is compelglobal.org. Then the book, Stride, you can pick it up on Amazon. And actually, what I'll say is 100% of proceeds from this book actually go to different humanitarian projects all over the world, whether it's anti-trafficking, refugees, clean water, food scarcity programs. Pick it up. Doing something good for yourself results in doing something good for the world when it's about growth and purpose. So there you go.
And that's awesome. We'll link to all that in the show notes for the episode, the best show notes in the business for reasons I will talk about more in a second. But first, for those of you that are new to the Misfit Entrepreneurs, your first episode with us, welcome. It is such an honor to have you with us. And I hope you become a regular listener, subscriber, watcher of the show. And for all of you that are with us week in, week out, I cannot thank you enough for your support of the show. You all makes this go in over 100 countries every single week. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And make sure and go out and check out the show notes for the episode. They are the best in the business. Why? Because I do them myself. Actually, as part of my personal growth routine each and every week, I go back through these episodes and I take my best pieces of wisdom, tips, insights, and everything from great guests like JJ, and I share them with you. So go check that out. And then go out and give this episode a rating and review, like and comment on it. Help share JJ's message, because we all know I say this in every episode. One great episode can change someone's life. Maybe something that JJ shared today was that missing link that you needed to get to your next level. So help share this with others. And again, JJ, thanks for coming on, sharing all your wisdom and insight today.
Absolutely. My pleasure, Dave. Thanks so much for having me on.